Good evening and welcome back to the Australian Stock Market Show. I'm going to start tonight's show with a quote from American historian Daniel J. Boorstin. The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. And this is so true. Tonight, Dale and I, in our upfront, no BS approach to all things stock market, will share with you lots of valuable content as we aim to increase your knowledge so you make better decisions. Our main topic tonight, we're going to take a look at the energy sector, and specifically, we'll take a look at 5 top energy stocks that might just be a buy in 2022. Hello, I'm Janine Cox, your host for tonight, and joining me is Dale Gillam, and we're Australia's most trusted stock market educators. Hello, how are you?
Good. I was just thinking about your quote.
Really?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it because I was chatting to one of our graduates who just finished the last module, and I spoke to him last week, and he used to trade spec stocks and watch YouTube for hours and hours on end and all of that sort of stuff. And when I've had 4 recordings with him, and I spoke to him on the first one, and I said, well, what are you normally doing? He goes, oh, I've been chasing the market, da-da-da-da-da. And so when I spoke to him last week, I said, just before you started our course, you thought you were trading? He goes, yes. And I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I asked you then, where do you think you were on the scale of knowing what you're doing? And he goes, I would have said 6, maybe 7. I said, okay, knowing what you know now, where would you rate yourself
Before?
back then? And he goes, 1.
Oh.
He said, I absolutely knew nothing. He said, I thought I knew everything, but I knew nothing.
Right.
And so he had that illusion of having knowledge. And
Yep.
he said, I can't believe how much, what I actually didn't know. And he just said, basically the course just changed his whole attitude, his whole thinking. And he said, I'm off the spec stocks, I'm making my money, I'm blah, blah, blah. So it was quite interesting. And as I said, I just read your quote and I was just thinking about that. So thank you for putting that up.
That's a pleasure.
Cool.
And what was really exciting too recently is we've just gone through some of the people we mentored, which was great to see them progressing.
Yeah, well, he was one of
the
those
course.
ones. Yeah, he was one of those ones. So we finished all that off anyway. But
and he's the one that had done all those hand charts, is he?
and he hand charted all these stocks.
Wow.
And he did a whole lot of work, and so he's pretty excited to move in and really expand on his trading and get his goal of trading full time.
Excellent.
So, anyway, but before we get into our first segment for tonight, again, we're going to take some live calls on the show. So if you do want to chat to Janine and I and ask us a question, then this is your opportunity to pick up your phone and call us now. The number you need to dial is 039290 9988. That's 03 for Melbourne, 929099988. Now, to get things started, the first person to call into the show right now will get a free copy of my latest book, Accelerate Your Wealth. Get that. So make sure you're first on the line now. I know Janine and I are super keen to chat to you, so make sure you grab your phone right now, get dialing.
While we wait for you to call, it is the 4th Tuesday in the month, and this means we take a look at world currencies. So let's get into the charts. All right, on the screen there, we have the list of currencies that we normally have a look at just to see where things are at now. This is actually the current month that we're looking at right now.
So 1 February to now.
Yep, and so we're looking at the top of the leaders board there, and we can see the Aussie dollar versus the Canadian dollar's up 2% already.
That's a big move in half
It's
a month,
nice, isn't it? The Hong Kong dollar is similar, so we've seen the same thing with the Aussie Hong Kong dollar. The Australian US dollar up 1.73. Japanese yen is actually Aussie dollar versus the Japanese yen up 1.4. And we're seeing the Australian dollar versus the Singapore dollar up 1.26%. What's interesting is all this green.
Yeah, well, last month it was all red.
Yeah.
So therefore things are turning around because the dollar only goes up because there's faith in what's going on in Australia, in our economy, and people thinking they're going to get better value. So they're buying Aussie dollars.
Right.
So,
and well, look, Australian dollar versus Chinese renminbi yuan up 1.24. Australian dollar versus the euro, which is really an interesting chart to have a look at, and we'll have a look at that a bit later, up 1% for the month so far.
Up against the pound.
Anything could happen though in the next few days. The Australian dollar versus the British pound up 0.54. And then we've got the Australian dollar versus the Swiss franc up 0.52. What's happened to the Australian dollar versus the New Zealand dollar?
Yeah, it's still down. I mean, it's only $1.07. I mean, last quarter last year was nearly $1.10, wasn't it? So it's still down a bit on the New Zealand dollar. So just click onto the yearly and then have a look at the charts. I don't want you to explain the yearly because I just wanted to see. Still a bit of a sea of red there, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
So,
this
but
month's a bit of a turnaround.
It's a bit of a turnaround. So what charts are you going to have a look at?
All right, I think we should have a look, obviously, at the Australian dollar versus the US dollar. And this is actually the part of the history. It's the monthly chart we're looking at. But what I wanted to talk about today is just how the currency is sitting around levels where basically it's really comfortable being.
Yeah.
So this is more or less the middle of the range over, say, since 2002. Of course, it goes back way further than that. But, I mean, if you look at it, somewhere between 70 cents and 80 cents is pretty normal for the currency. So the RBA would have to be reasonably happy with that, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I think they would be, because they do like to sit around that sort of range on the Aussie dollar, US dollar currency pair. Now, obviously, from our point of view, you know, the US is one of our bigger investors in Australia, and a lot of people say, you know, who's the biggest investor in Australia? It's China,
but
it's not. It's the
Mm.
US. China's about number 5 or number 6, I think, on the list of countries that invest in Australia. So, to me, that's a good sign that we're holding up there.
It is nice, isn't it? Look, let's have a look at something further afield. What about Australian dollar versus the British pound? So this one is actually a really strange looking chart. What that is going to do, I can actually tell you it's got me stumped right now. It's trading within a range which doesn't sort of make sense to me, and I was expecting it to take off when it was moving up here back in December 2020, but it was just odd. This whole formation is really quite odd, what we're seeing. So it could turn bearish and start heading down if it takes out this recent low here at 51.8, I think, cents it is it? But if it trades back above this high, then we're going to see the currency moving up and appreciating.
Yeah, I mean, 50, 60 odd cents is generally what it sits around, sort of in that pound sterling type of range. I know multiple times you look at it around those sorts of levels, but I'd like to see it a bit higher. So what was the other one you were going to have a look at?
Is that because you want to go over there?
I do want to go back to the UK.
Yeah.
I haven't been there for years. So are we looking at another chart, or are we going to talk about travel?
Okay, I'd like to talk
I know the
about
borders are
travel,
open.
but let's just talk about the currencies.
Okay.
All right, Australian dollar versus the euro, and we do know that with inflation spiking in the US, that's having an impact.
Yes.
So when inflation goes up, we know that can have a deflationary effect, because then the actual buying power of a particular currency is actually going to drop. So that can affect people. Over decades, we've seen currency inflation take off in certain countries, and we've seen currencies actually plummet, haven't we,
really
in some
devalue.
countries?
And there's a lot of trading. I mean, you know, back in the 60s, you weren't trading in currencies like we do now. It's just the last 2 or 3 decades, especially the last 2 decades.
You mean individuals?
Yeah, well, individuals and corporations, you know, once, you know, they've just, the amount of currency trading at the moment is a massive amount. But they're still sitting around sort of good levels. So at the moment, everything's looking good for the Australian dollar, I think.
Look, I think it's looking pretty comfortable where it is there, even against the euro. So I think that's probably enough for us to talk about.
I think it's a good vindication that Australian economy is okay.
Yeah, okay, I do too. That is all from us on world currencies. Now it's time to get into our first email for the night.
All right, our first email for tonight is from Joe, who says, "Hi Dale and Janine, thank you for your weekly show. I find it very helpful. Could you please look at Computershare for me? Thanks. With tech stocks bearish at the moment, I'm interested in taking a position in CPU. Thanks, Joe." So Joe's one of our regulars. We get quite a few emails from her in the past.
Very good. Look, I actually remember some of Joe's emails, and they were quite insightful.
Yeah, she's good. She's very, very good.
All right, so shall we have a look at Computershare then?
Absolutely.
All right, on your screen there, you can see the monthly and weekly charts of Computershare. Now, we did see a big spike in Computershare's share price. They had an announcement. So in reporting season, obviously, we can see some stocks that have taken off and others that have fallen away as a result of whatever the market's heard, and then either likes the share or didn't like the share. Computershare obviously got a big thumbs up. Now, the news often attracts a lot of people.
Correct.
Who just decide, right, I've heard this great story about it, I'm going to jump in on it. But it's not necessarily a wise decision, is it?
No, it's not. And obviously, it's, you know, Computershare is the pretty much the big stock in the tech sector, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, talking about if it's going up or down, and not all tech stocks are going down. You know, I know Xero's going down at the moment, but not all tech stocks in Australia are going down. A lot more in the US are going down. So you can't really translate that. But I do like this stock.
Yeah, I think when they launched overseas, I think that changed the game for Computershare. It looks really fantastic at the moment, but I'd be expecting it to come back short
I was
term.
going to say, would you be looking to take a new position in it right
No,
now?
not right now.
And I wouldn't be either. So, Joe, we wouldn't be taking a new position in it right now. So just be patient and then come back in later.
Now, Dale, it looks like we've got a caller on the line. It's Luke. Hi, Luke. How are you this evening, and where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi Janine and Dale. I'm from Western Australia.
Wow, excellent. Luke, great to hear your voice and have you on the line with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. What's the stock that you've got for us tonight?
The ASX stock. I've just liked its steady growth over the last 5 years, and back in 2019 March, I actually sold up my whole portfolio, and I've only just, as of the last 2 weeks, got back into share buying, and I'm looking for a steady growth one for my portfolio, as well as income stocks for my wife.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for giving us that understanding of where you're coming from. The ASX is a really good stock to have in your portfolio, so a really good choice, like the choice. We'll just go to the chart for you and give you an idea on what our thoughts are over the medium to longer term then. On the screen right there, on the left-hand side, you can see I've got the monthly chart. Now, what Luke was talking about is long-term trends. So this is this beautiful long-term trend that we can see.
Pretty stable, isn't it?
Yeah, except for this period here with COVID. We obviously saw huge levels of volatility because the ASX obviously make a big amount of money from the transactions, but they also make money from mergers and acquisitions.
They make far more money from that, don't
That's
they?
right, and so that was all, it sort of dried up a bit for a while, and we saw the stock pull back in March or into April 2021, then take off again. So often stocks will take a bit of a breather after trading to a new all-time high. So we could see this period of consolidation happen now, but we're just being patient and waiting for that opportunity, aren't we?
Well, look, absolutely correct. And I mean, I know 2021 was a record year for the ASX for M&As, for mergers and acquisitions. They've come out with a whole thing saying they expect the same for 2022. So I think just be patient right now. I wouldn't be getting it right now. I think it's may be falling a little bit more, but just stay around, mate, and it could be a really good buy for you.
All right, looks like we need some more callers on the line tonight. Come on, everybody. If you've got a question, something is niggling at you, then call 039290 9988. I know that you want to. Just have the courage to pick up your phone and dial that number. We look forward to chatting with you, really. So our next email is actually from Jacob. Could you please look at XRG for me? I've been following it for a couple of months now, and it's such a young stock, but seems to have fallen into a trend or pattern. How does it look from a technical side of things? I'm looking to pick some up for a medium-term investment. I've only recently discovered the show or podcast and have caught up like the last few months in less than a week. Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. Thanks so much for the great content. Many thanks from Jacob in WA. All these WA people.
And I think he'd be sick of listening to us, wouldn't he?
Is that the brain of Australia now? It's going to move from Sydney to WA?
I don't know. Is it? I'm not. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. There's some really good thinking people over in WA.
Well, there is, and we do get a lot of miners, and I know we have had people. Jacob may be one of them. He may be a miner. I know there's a lot of people that do watch the show that are in the mines and do love what we're actually doing. So
awesome. Well, I hope we can help with this one.
And I know a lot of them pick these specky type stocks as well because
Right.
they might work in a specific industry in the mines and therefore they love it, so then they pick stocks like that. So this could be the same case here because this looks like quite a liquid stock to me.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Look, X Realty Group, XRG was the code. Now we can see that it went through it's probably not much point looking at the monthly chart for too long, other than to say that obviously if this was the stock from listing, if it hasn't had a backdoor listing and it's still the same stock, then, it's got potential for upside at the moment, but it is illiquid, so high risk, and you could do your dough in a couple of weeks. That's the challenge with it. So not for the faint-hearted and probably not for people who don't know what they're doing, I would say is really important. It's because of that risk. But what's interesting here is how it had consolidated sideways for quite so long and then it just took off, which is what often happens with these small shares when they do form these sideways move. And it looked like it was getting higher and then all of a sudden it went up. So I think it's an interesting stock and it's got potential. It's got the potential to trade up probably to about 13 or 14 cents in the short term. But this week, the problem is it's falling quite heavily. So I wouldn't even entertain it until it got back above 80 cents.
Well, it's quite looking like it's quite a low liquid stock, so I would suggest he grabs his calculator and multiplies the current share price by how many shares are traded on a week, and you'll find that not a lot of dollars in this stock. So is this a long-term buy?
Yeah, it's not really a stock you want to have a long-term buy on.
Yeah, that's correct, because you could be coming all the way back down and just going sideways for the next couple of years. This is so hit and miss, it's not funny. So, but I think that's what we've got for XRG. Do you want to add any more?
Yeah, that's a really good one. No, I've got nothing further to add on that one.
Okay, so I believe we're moving on. We have a question from Kevin Deb. So, hi, Dale and Janine, do you have a favourite platform? We have a CommSec account and want to know if it is the best for short-term trading. Also, if we buy extra shares in a company we already own shares in, the purchase price column updates to the price we paid most recently, but this isn't accurate, is it? Thanks for your very informative show, Kev and Deb. It's nice to have a couple.
Kevin Deb. It's kind of cute, isn't it?
Hello, Kevin Deb.
Yeah, I like it.
Welcome to the show. Interesting question. Now, we don't have a favourite platform, and I know we don't. It's because you don't categorise a platform for short, medium or long term. It's just a platform. CommSec's a great platform, but so are a lot of stockbrokers in Australia, so don't do that. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, but it's just as long as they do the trade. Now I know you can answer the next part of the question.
Well, look, I mean, I think you did the easy part.
I know.
I think you should do the second part as well.
Well, I can do the other part if you like.
Yeah, I think you should.
Okay. The other part to your question is obviously when you're buying multiple parcels. Now, you can get an aggregated view or disaggregated view. So what you've done is when you're buying a second parcel, it's giving you like a consolidated view of your actual shares. So I know with most brokers, I know definitely with mine, I trade with Macquarie. You can just open it up and it'll show you all the different purchases, but I don't buy multiple purchases of stock. So that's all it's saying. It's probably it may be giving you the average price. That might be, I'm not guaranteeing that it might be the average price, or it's just giving you the price of the last time you traded that stock. But again, if you want to really look at it in a disaggregated view and open it up and see all the trades there. Anything else you want to add?
No,
Was that okay?
I think you did really well.
Okay, good. Can we go forward?
We can.
Okay. All right, it's mine. Janine.
Yes, it's my name.
I do think it's time we get into
please.
our main topic for tonight, which is the top energy stocks that might be a buy in 2022.
Now, I thought you would never ask. I thought we'd never get to this point.
I just normally tell, don't I?
I always get excited about the energy sector. It is one of the most interesting and volatile sectors on the market. And when it trends down, it usually does so with great gusto, and correspondingly, the stocks in the energy sector will often dive. On the flip side, a rise in the energy sector can provide spectacular gains in some of the stocks, and we know the sector was down in 2021, and following a significant decline is often a great rise. So tonight we plan to share our view on whether energy could be the best performing sector in 2022, and we will take a look at 5 top stock opportunities in the energy sector.
Well done. I'm excited about looking at those. Now, I think it's important before we get into it to know that whilst over the past decade or so, the energy sector periodically spent time tracking up. Most of the time it was actually trading in a long-term decline. So I really think it's important we talk about the trends in the energy sector and explain with the help of the chart what has been going on. Now, taking that bird's eye view of a sector can be much more important than looking at the individual stocks within it. Now, on another note, Janine, it is important to remember that when a sector rises, it could be driven by just one or a handful of stocks. So if you do invest, you really do need to be very choosy about the stocks you select, because a rise could just be a short-term move. So stick to quality stocks.
The charts indicate that when oil prices rise, we see a corresponding rise in or response in better energy stocks, and having an exposure in your portfolio to a rise in the sector can provide good gains when other sectors may be falling. Now, we know there is a lot of tension around the globe, particularly around the Russian-Ukraine conflict, which is driving oil higher. So is this just a short-term move, or are energy stocks on a sustained rise? We also know that fund managers have moved away from tech into energy in a search for value over growth. As inflation is rising, this is a cyclical shift really that's going on. So now the big question is, how long will it last? You may have watched our show last week where we discussed inflation and when it rose strongly outside of when major corrections have unfolded on the market.
Yeah, I remember that one. I was here, I think. Okay, we had better stop waffling. Actually, it was you that's waffling, not me, like we
This
did last
time,
week.
but that doesn't happen every time. Often it's you that's waffling.
Well, it is, but last week it was you, and we missed out on sharing our thoughts on a couple of the stocks. I don't want that to happen this week, Janine. The viewers have high expectations. So let's get into the charts and stop waffling so we get through the stocks.
All right then. Okay, now the first chart I've got up on the screen for you. Tell me if I'm going too fast as well.
You're going too slow, go.
Okay, is the energy sector. Now we're going to look at the monthly chart because this really gives us that bird's eye view we were talking about. Now the sector's only started in 2001, so we don't have further history to show you at this point. But what is important here is that from this period here in 2008 all the way through to the period with the COVID pullback, we've seen a long-term decline at play. Now there have been periods of rises, that could be a few years long in the energy space, and they're getting longer. So you can see as we look up here, there were some short-term rises, one from this low in 08, another one from the low here in 11, and then we've got the rise from 2016. Now 2016 was where the mining stocks actually turned, so that was all helping all of that up. Now we're seeing something else unfolding on the chart right now where we're seeing this push and this move up, and it's pushing and indicating that we may see the energy sector head up more towards 11,000 points. That's what it looks like currently on the charts. We know there's a lot of resistance across this level around 12,000 points, so we're expecting it to move up into that zone. Now, we were talking about the fact that these sectors are often dominated by a few stocks, and that's what happens. So just because the sector looks great doesn't necessarily mean that all the stocks in the sector will, and there's a lot of rubbish in the energy sector, I can tell you, to stay away from. But what we also need to be thinking about is what's driving this up. Now, we know oil has been rising, so there's as we said, the conflict exists. Were you just putting some things on the chart to help the conversation? Were you just having a bit of fun there and taking things away?
I'm having a bit of fun and putting things on.
I think you'd tell me off if I did that while you were talking.
Am I not allowed to do this?
No.
I'm sorry.
All right. So you just have to excuse him for a moment.
I was just playing.
All right. You better share what you want to share now.
No, I was just showing people the rises. I mean, obviously, two things that really stood out for me was when you see a stock fall from that long a distance. So if I use one of my little tools here, and we go to this high, you can see from there to there, we're talking about that's 141 months it's fallen away.
Yep.
And yet that low is still above all its lowest low back in March 2013. Generally, when you see a stock do that, that low is way below all its lowest low generally. It generally makes lower lows. This one hasn't, so therefore there's still good value there. But that's a hell of a long time that's been falling. But if you look at the rises in here, so you've got some reasonable rises. There's 72%, there's nearly 40% through there, and that rise up there from 2016 was 89%. And so far, it's moving up quite nicely. Used the wrong tool. Dale, use the right tool. You should have told me that. And if we use this,
I'm just sitting here, just letting you go for it.
And we're up 81% on this one.
Yeah. So that doesn't prove anything right now, does it?
No, I'm just saying it's making some good rises, and they're quite steady rises. And as you're saying, it's got some resistance around 12,000 points. So I think there's more to go on this one.
Yeah, but not based on those rises, okay? So because there was a 72%, a 33 and an 89, that's not the thing that's indicating that it could rise further.
Correct.
Okay, so now what we do is we go down and have a look at the stock level, but before we do, let's just have a look at oil.
Okay.
Because the monthly chart of oil looks extremely bullish.
Well, there you go. See, that was down since 2008.
Yep. Now, we have to ignore that negative zone, don't we?
Yes.
Because really, when it went into negative territory, it really, a chart needs to be registering a positive. We're not talking about variations around the 0 point when we're talking about prices. But it did trade into a negative, so what do you do with it? I'm looking at it from the point of view of, okay, let's see where oil really wants to be sitting. And now, it wants to be up here around that $100 mark, 110, anywhere between 90, 110, and it could go as far as 120 and take out that high. So I'm just watching to see that it does that. We may see a bit of sideways consolidation in the short term, but you'd have to say that in the main, that's a beautiful trend.
It is a beautiful trend.
and therefore it's likely to keep going until it tells us otherwise. To me, that's the best trend we've seen in a long time since the rise here from this low in 2007.
It is.
And yet it's nowhere near its highs. So I think that looks interesting to see, well, what could happen to oil? Could, even all this talk about renewables, could we see oil take out that all-time high?
I mean, it is possible. It really is possible. Obviously, it will depend on world economics in terms of whether,
And conflicts.
And conflicts around the world. That's sort of what I mean. How all that plays out, what that does to the price of oil. But we are moving very fast away from reliance on oil.
But now the producers are actually, and stocks like Woodside, they'd be making money for jam now with prices up at this high. So, I mean, that's why it's really good to look at these sorts of stocks. It's just a bit like the iron ore. There were all these stocks when iron ore was down low that just weren't able, they had hardly any margin and weren't making the money. But with the iron ore price up higher, they're making great money on the bottom line. So now we're seeing the same sort of thing with some of these energy stocks. So let's just take a look at a chart of Woodside. Now, this is the chart of Woodside. Now, of course, because this stock dominates the sector, it pretty much is the chart of the energy sector.
That does look the same as the energy sector, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, because it's the biggest, it's the mammoth stock in the sector. Now, when I look at this long-term chart, that tells me that this is bullish long-term when I'm looking at it now like this. I mean, Woodside could go anywhere between like $40 and $45. That's just what it currently looks like, if it keeps rising the way that it is. So, but not all stocks in the sector are going to have the same trajectory. So, largest Australian natural gas producer, integrated upstream supplier of energy. We've seen the deal being done between BHP and Woodside. Yep. So, there's been consolidation in the industry as well, which has helped. Oil Search, was swallowed up. So now we've got Santos is the next big. So Woodside's actually my pick of the sector.
Okay, so you're not going down onto the weekly chart on that one, or you are?
I don't think there's any point right now. I mean, look at that chart. It's bullish.
I'm just asking questions for all our viewers. You might be going, Janine, I haven't seen the weekly chart.
Well, I'm not. I'm saying it like if you were in it, then you'd be pretty happy right now. Would you be buying it right now? Possibly. It depends on whether you've got a medium to long-term strategy, but you'd have to be prepared for volatility. Yeah. Is that why you wanted to look at the weekly?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Are you going to tell us something?
I'm here to challenge you.
Okay, fantastic.
If they're not going to ring up on the phone, I'm going to challenge you.
So does that look like a nice trend?
That looks like an awesome trend to me. It looks very nice.
Okay, and we've got a gap there on the weekly chart, so we know short term it's heading up there, possibly to challenge these highs here before it then tells us what it's going to do next. So that's Woodside. Santos, we're looking at a continuation of that sideways move. So the move from this low here looks very similar to the Woodside chart, except this one hasn't pushed on. But it seemed more bullish, and yet it hasn't broken out yet. And I think that it didn't fare through reporting season as well as what Woodside did. Just looking at the long-term picture of the stock, we can see that these are long-term bottoms we're talking about, major bottoms. So I think that Santos could be a good one as well. It's just a little too early to tell whether it's going to pull back.
So you buy above $8 there, or? Well,
look, I'd say if it pulls back below this low here, we know it's going nowhere. Don't try to get it on the cheap, because these are very risky shares to be in if they go the wrong way, because you can see the sort of declines that can happen. This share in particular is quite volatile. You have to be getting in at the right time, and then you have to have a good stop loss in place. But look, I'm just going to let the viewers work out where they would like to get in, because I'm not talking about a specific entry on Santos at this point, because it's got no direction at the moment. It's just sideways. But Santos is an oil and gas producer, liquefied natural gas, pipeline gas and oil assets, just to explain that one. Now, these stocks are not going to suit everybody, because if you've got the view that you'd rather be in renewables, then I understand that completely, then have your portfolio set up and weighted to stocks that are more into the renewable space and do your research on that. Ampol, ALD, we may do a show on those sorts of stocks again at some stage. We did do a show on that.
Renewables,
and so we're looking at Ampol now. This refines and imports and markets fuels, lubricants for Australian transport. Now, this is crucial, obviously, because everything's just gearing back up in the economy. We're seeing now international flights coming back in. So it's the early stages of all of this happening again. And the potential upside for this one, looking at around this 36 to the all-time high there, I think it's been in a long-term decline. You'd have to say that after all those years in a decline, 6 years or so, that it's long enough now. It's due in time to start taking off. It's been making higher lows.
And when this thing takes off, you can
It
really
should
make some
take
good
off
money
nicely.
safely with
Look
this
how
one.
it's gone in the past. So we're just watching that one at the moment. It looks really nice, but you have to have your own set of rules, obviously, and decide when it's taking off. But if it goes back above these highs here, it should just take off and head back up to the high in 2020. So we've got, and interesting, isn't it, how these stocks have lagged
Yes.
the rest of the market, but we often see things happen in stages. So we'll see all areas of the market take off eventually, but it just does it. It's the timing of each one doing this, making these moves will be different. So Viva Energy makes imports and delivers fuels. Now, when I've shown you on a previous show, we've gone to look for what stocks are in what sectors. Are really, if you don't have Optima and you haven't done one of our courses yet, a quick way to look up these stocks is we've used ListCorp it's a website we've used and talked about on the show before as a quick way to help
listcorp.com.au.
Yeah, to help investors look for the stocks in particular sectors. So this stock, Viva Energy, makes imports and delivers fuel, lubricants, chemical and bitumen. And I thought it looked interesting from the point of view that we don't have a lot of history, and we could talk about that, because stocks that don't have a lot of history, they're much harder to analyse for medium to longer term, but good for short-term analysis. Now, the thing to bear in mind with this stock is the drawdown that happens, and this is quite typical of energy stocks. You can get significant drawdowns each time it pulls back, so in the order of around 20% is normal. So just be prepared that that's what's going to happen. And I'm not saying set your stop loss in that order. I'm just suggesting that you just understand that if you get into a stock that it could turn around and fall that much. So just have that as a consideration.
But it does look really good, doesn't it? It really does look good.
For this one, I think we should go to the weekly chart just because there's not enough data and it helps us understand the personality better. But to me, that looks like that there's a lows in there, and we potentially, if this stock takes off above that high at $2.50, we could see it challenge that all-time high and possibly go through it. Of course, if it heads back below 220, 230, I'd be a little bit concerned about it and be watching to see whether it's more likely to fall away. And if it takes out that low, well then
then it's all over Red Rover for a while.
You don't even want to look at it then. But if you are holding it, then you've got to have a good stop loss on this one, because if you look at where it is, it doesn't take much to get down to a prior low. You've got a 20% fall to that low if you waited. And do you really want to risk that?
That's a really important distinction. I know a lot of people don't think of that sort of stuff.
So they're not thinking when they buy a stock, where could the risk be? If it fell below a particular level, does it mean then it changes the whole game? And they're still hanging on to the stock and the whole game's changed.
Well, yeah, or they jump in and then it starts to fall away and then they jump out and it goes down a little bit more and then turns around and goes back up again because they haven't really looked at really what the personality of the stock is. They've just maybe been sold a story or whatever else, but they don't look at that and go, oh, okay, this thing normally falls 20%. So I should be expecting that if it does start to fall away, it will fall 20%, especially if I'm a long-term type of player.
Yeah.
But if I'm a short-term player, that's also another signal to say, okay, how am I going to get into this so I can capture profit before it falls away? And
even though this has trended okay, it's not a beautiful trend. It's nice that it's going up and it's making these higher peaks, but it's actually quite messy because it spends a lot of time going sideways. But that personality could change, and that's the downside with picking stocks that don't have a lot of history. It's that personality thing, isn't it? And understanding how it trades.
Yeah, and as I said, we get too many emails and too many comments from people who buy stocks who don't really understand some of this stuff and downside risk, because intellectually they know the stock can go against them. But most people, when they buy, don't think that's going to happen. But I know nearly everybody doesn't have a strategy in case it does.
That's right.
And that's really what we keep talking about, is making sure you've got the strategy and you know what the personality of the stock is and what you're doing.
All right, have we got time for one more?
So we want to look at another one? Yeah.
Okay, we've got Beach Petroleum now. Now, this is one that someone's called up on the show in the past about. Oil and gas exploration and production. Now, it has been hit hard. Okay, this is probably the most risky one out of all the ones that we've talked about tonight. And look, right now, I'd be saying it's still quite risky. It depends on your strategy. It's actually made a move that I think could be interesting. It's just, there was a high here in, what's that, $1.52. It's taken out that high. This is the monthly chart. So if it took off, and looking at the big picture, We can see there that there's real resistance for this share sort of around that middle of the chart, and understandably so. But if it starts to head above these highs up here, then it could continue to take off. I like it from a short-term perspective at the moment, but I'd just be watching right now. So at the moment, it went up, shot up like a rocket, and then closed low at the end of the week. You don't want to see that if you're going to be buying where the close, where, you know, if people who are trading the market in the know are the ones closing the market at the end of the week, they've closed it out on the downside. Now, there can be, you know, some things going on in the market that, you know, that trick people into thinking, oh, there's nothing happening on this share, I won't look at it, and then all of a sudden the following week it shoots up. That can happen with these stocks that are, you know, it's not a small stock, but in the lower end. But if that continues to move up, I think that'd be really nice little share.
It is, and you're so right. I mean, you know, we talked about it the other week, I think, in terms of support and resistance. And I know, you know, the majority of people understand the words support and resistance, but I find that so many, and I call them retail traders, and though people tell me I hate retail traders, and I can't understand that why, because all our clients are retail traders, so I love them.
Sorry?
I know, I've had people tell me I don't like retail traders, but they're all of our clients are retail traders. I love them. I just like people to understand what they're actually doing. But if we look at the chart, and where the crosshair is, you could say this area where the crosshair is, the horizontal one, is the resistance level. And so we see a lot of people, what they do is they place trades just above those levels to take it in. And what a lot of people don't think of is the institutions really understand that people will sit on these levels waiting to buy when it pushes through. So the institutions push it through.
And it's
get
much
people
easier
to
manipulate it when there are smaller stocks.
Correct. And then they do it on these stocks. And so when it pushes through, you get all this buying coming in, and the big end of town, and the vacuum gets sucked up really quickly, and then the big end of town is selling into that, and then they push it down again.
Yep.
So, and people get caught out about this all of the time.
I'll never forget this lady that I had the pleasure of having some email communication with, and she was doing our trading mentor course.
Yeah.
And she said the first time that she actually had this explained to her properly, and she looked at examples of it, it just blew her away, because she never would have even thought to look at this sort of thing and properly understand it and learn it.
Okay, question. Have you ever bought because a stock, your buying rule is because a stock's broken a resistance level?
It's not the only rule.
No, I'm not saying that's the only
But
rule
that-
you use.
that could be the
Have you
trigger.
ever bought a stock because it's pushed through a resistance level?
Sure.
And that's your only rule. That's your only rule.
Oh, no, never.
Have you ever sold because a stock fell through a support level and that was your only rule?
No.
Okay, but people do that, and that's really what I'm trying to get here. If you use support and resistance as your rule to buy and sell, then it's not enough. It's really, you're going to get.
Is that
false
what
triggers all the time.
indicators are doing? Some of the indicators are basically like support and resistance, and that's how people are buying and selling?
Some of them do, but you know, you get, and I had, you know, there's people that just use volume, you know, and they just look at volume and they go, oh, that's a buy signal. No, it's not. And the thing is we can't ever forget that whatever you know, the industry knows, and they know 10 times more than that. Now, it's not to say you can't trade against industry, because we do that all the time and we win. But it's just about understanding how they work so that you can understand the rules that you need. And it's about, if you're going to play games, understand the rules. You know, you get the card game out, you've got to read the rules first before you play. So to me, looking at Beach Petroleum, I love this stock. I think it's a nice stock. You can make some really good money out of it.
So the thing to always do, obviously, is to look at what the risk is. So there's a load there.
Yeah.
It's around, 15% or something.
Yep.
But that might not be the point that you want to get. It depends on your rules. You might want to set it at 5 or 10, depending on what you've found.
Yeah, so basically to sort of wrap up what we're talking about today, Beach Petroleum is not, I won't say it's a specky buy, but it's a lower one, a lower cap in the big ones we're looking at. Woodside looks great, so you're liking that. What was the next stock? It was
Santos
Santos,
hasn't
a little bit,
moved
wait
yet,
a bit.
still sideways.
Wait for some direction on that, but that could be an awesome buy when it picks some direction.
And ALD, you know, you might already be in it because there were rules to get into it, but you know, if you're not, then you just want to buy things that are have the momentum in the right direction, not just because it's in the energy sector. So when stocks start moving up, that's a good time to do so. And then you've got VEA.
VEA,
And that was one that had less data to play with, but it
That
was a
looked
little
nice.
bit riskier. and we couldn't judge it on a long-term perspective, but on a shorter to medium-term perspective has potential.
And Beach may give us a buy in the next few weeks, possibly, maybe in the next
Interesting.
month or so. So watch out for those. I think Janine's picked a hell of a lot of good stocks there, but that is it for our topic for tonight. So I'm sure everybody's thanking you, Janine. Now, before we get into our next email, I do hope you have your phone ready and have been patiently waiting for the opportunity to call into the show to ask Janine and I your most burning questions. Now it's time to pick up your phone. Just pick it up right now. I know you've got it next to you. Pick it up and start dialing the number. And the number is 0392909988. That's 0392909988. And while it's ringing, you'll think of the question you're going to ask us. So get dialing now.
While you call us, we will get into answering the next email. So call now, just to help me with that little blunder. You've got to call in. Please do so now. Don't shake your head at me.
I'm always shaking my head at you because we do have a question, and it's from Aktha, who's also somebody's emailed us a few times before. He says, "Hi Dale and Janine, I've bought Novanix in December 2020 for $1.12. Now the stock is currently in a downtrend. Where do you see this stock heading to? I'm worried it will go down to $3. Should I get out now or hold? Many thanks, Aktha."
Right.
Good
Interesting
question.
stock, isn't it? And looking at the chart, you can understand why he's feeling this way. He's quite concerned probably at the moment.
Tanking.
It's plummeted, which it's an interesting stock. It's actually, he's still got a great profit in there.
So he bought in December 2020. So where did he
so
buy?
I've marked it down
So he
there. I'll
bought
just
in a
get rid
great
of that
spot.
crosshair. So you can see it on the weekly chart there where it's marked, but there wasn't actually an entry really where he's picked it up. So it was actually high risk where he bought it. Even if he bought it a week or two later, it still would have been a better confirmation that it was going to go up, and he still would have had a good rise out of it.
But he hasn't got an exit strategy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he probably would have been out of it through here. There was plenty of
And
reasons
back in
and
it.
signals, and then back in again. It just makes it safer. That's all, to be doing that, especially with a stock like this. And now it's actually taken off to the downside. So if anything, that was probably a training lesson to tell him, you know, you don't have a rule. You need to look at what your rules are. It's telling you all that time. Every time a stock pulls back, that's what it's telling you. So I think you're very brave, and I'd take my hat off to you for writing in about this one. Really, I do. And it's done incredibly well. So well done. It's just the exit side of things, which is the challenge for a lot of people, isn't it?
Oh, it is, and that's what I'm saying is people don't have an exit strategy because we would have exited this ages ago, probably
Well,
up
look,
over
there's
$8.
quite a few rules that to tell you to get out there, but I think, you know, looking at this, he's wanting to know if it could come back to $3, and there's a real risk it could.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, it could find support where it is now. We've got that low there. We could see it find support between $4 and
But it's an
$5.
if. But you know, again, he should have had exit rules on it and exited otherwise.
Or even taken
a
a part profit, you know, take the capital off the table so then you're trading with the market's money, or take something off the table so you're happy with what you've got and then allow the rest to run. But
All right, thanks, Aktha, for that question. Now, I do believe we've got a phone caller on the line. Janine, I believe we've got Rob. Have we got Rob?
Yep. G'day. How you going?
Good, buddy. Where are you from?
Townsville, North Queensland.
Ah, beautiful place on the world. Have you got a question for us today, Rob?
I do. It's on Fortescue Metals, FMG.
Yep.
I'm trading short term, and I like this. Got a good run up there until it's turned around now. And my question is, do you think it's forming a reversal pattern, or will it continue up to around $30?
So are you currently in the stock right now?
No, I'm not. I got out a couple of weeks back.
Okay, so you're waiting for it to find a bottom before you get back into it again. That's what you're telling me?
Yes, I think it might have, but I'm interested in what you think.
Okay.
actually, Rob, are you in the mining sector yourself? Do you work in the industry?
Not exactly, no. I
Okay.
do supply them on industry.
God,
Okay.
That's okay. All right, Rob, thank you very much for calling into the show. Janine will get into FMG, one of her favourite stocks for you.
Yeah, look, I mean, FMG's a great share, and I think that the miners still have further upside. I mean, it's amazing to me to think that FMG's done as well as it's done and traded beautifully up there. There's a little gap there up on the weekly chart. We could see it actually come back a little bit further and test support before finding its way back up, but it seems to want to hang around this area here. You know, there's a real support level across there for the stock. So I'd just like to see it come back, test that level, and then see what it does on the turnaround when it takes off
Yeah, I don't
again.
think it's worrying me too much. I just think right now it's got more downside to happen, and then once that finds some support, then have a good look at it. So that'd be. I mean, I do like this stock, and I do agree with you. But if you want to be like Rob, just give us a call on
It's a great
9290
trading stock,
9988.
isn't it? Great trading stock.
It is a great
FMG.
trading stock, but you've got to have good rules for this one, don't you?
You do. Our next email is from Jeremy. Hi, Dale and Janine. I'm generally a long-term investor, but I bought Rio Tinto as a short-term investment with a minimal amount of cash. I bought at $107 as it was a good price to enter and the chart showed good momentum. In the short term, it is coming up to a resistance level of approximately 130. Just seeing what your thoughts are medium to long term. Thinking of changing my viewpoint to long-term type of hold if the value passes through the resistance level. Thoughts, Jeremy? Really good question. Good stock again. We're seeing, you know, in that iron ore space, another great one. Look, I think it's got the potential to go to that 130. I think you're right in that making that point was a good point. I just don't get it in a way why the Rio and FMG, Rio and BHP, for example, haven't continued to go up. You know, I mean, I just see these stocks as being in excess of 130. Like Rio, for example, I see its value well in excess of 130. The charts indicate that that's possible. But in the short term, with everything that's going on around the world, there is the bit of uncertainty there that could lead to anything being sold off at any time. It's just we're in a different sort of, I guess, environment right now, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a little bit more volatile and things are being punished a little bit quicker now at the moment because obviously what's going on around the world. I do agree with you. I think this stock should be a lot higher than what it is. I think the entry that she's got is pretty good. It's probably a bit later. Well, it's later than what we would have taken it, but it's still a good entry.
Well, there's actually no entry. That's the funny thing about Rio and BHP is you and I have chatted about it before, that there was actually no entry, technical entry, to really get into it early on because it was just too hard to try to fit the trend line in there, and there's a whole lot of other reasons. So, you know, you might have been able to get into it just recently. So they've actually got in early, but seen that momentum going and trying to just get in on the momentum or on the run, hoping that it will keep running.
So you're saying it was a bit of a guess getting in at that spot.
Look, I think it was a bit of a guess getting in at that point, given that the chart it had gapped up
but
on the chart.
It could turn into a great trade.
It could.
It is a
has
good trade
the
right
potential
now.
to.
It could turn into a great trade.
It could do that.
And get through that $30. So Janine's agreeing with you. So how's that? So if you do want to give us a call on 9290 9988. Janine and I are absolutely champing at the bit to have a chat with you, so pick up your phone now. But now it's time for another email. This one's from Sandra, who says, hello, Dale and Janine, new to trading, love your book and love watching you on YouTube. When trying to sell the stock for the first time, I was watching the bids and offers list before 10 a.m. and was following its fluctuations. Now, in this particular example, the closing price from the previous day was $21.09 at 9:59 a.m. There were bids for $21.78, $22.36 and $23.53 that had matching offers that could fulfill the volumes I wanted. At 10 a.m. when the market opened, all bids above $21.09 disappeared off the buyers list and my offer of $23.53 was left unfilled. I used to like watching this chart to try and read the depth for the stock I am interested in. However, after this experience, I'm wondering if I was too foolish to use this chart as one of my tools when it appears to be not quite right, Sandra. And I've actually edited half of that email. It was a long one.
Yeah, and it is an involved discussion. Did you want to answer that, or did you want me to start talking about that?
You can do this one. I reckon you're capable of it.
Thank you. So, you know, the challenge really is for people when they're looking at the market is understanding what's actually going on, because when the market is in that what's called a pre-open phase, there's an auction. So there's an auction at the start and there's an auction at the end of the day. So what's happening is people are bidding over and above the last price to get their trades filled. The same too if they actually want to sell, you know, they're bidding under. So, you know, it can skew the depth, and you'd be sitting there thinking, oh, well, there was depth there. I should have been able to get my order filled, but it's not going to fill on that. It's filling on the match price for when the market's going to open. So that's what you've really you're up against, because all the institutions are looking at the match price and they're thinking, okay, I put my order in above where I want to be, and therefore I know I'm definitely going to get filled. That's what it's about. So, have you got anything more that you want to say?
Yeah, looking at the depth of the market is next to useless to you. It really is next to useless to you. Actually, we don't even look at it unless we're placing a lot of trades in a more lower liquid stock. And so in terms of looking at that, it's actually fictional too. Anything before 10 a.m. is pure fiction, because study it every day, and just do this as a study for yourself, is look at the depth of the market on different stocks and look at it, and you'll see it changing all of the time. And at 10 o'clock when it opens, it'll do the same thing. It'll be all over the place, and you go, why did that open at that point? And it's partly really because of what Janine said, is the whole matchup that they do before the market, when the market is opening, that pre-matchup. And there's also, we've got the same one after the market closes at 4 p.m. We do get another matchup then, but don't look at the depth of the market to determine whether you're going to get a buyer and seller at your price, because unless the transaction's happened, whatever you're seeing is just fictional. Because I don't know about you, Janine, but I know I can place a trade or order to buy at a limit or sell it at a limit at 9:45. I can do that, you can do that, everybody watching can do that.
And we wait for it to get filled.
And at 10 seconds to 10, I can just delete my trade. And it's not there anymore. You can do that. Now, you might say, well, institutions and brokers aren't supposed to do that, but maybe they do.
But they may have had a whole lot of orders sitting there, and then they just clear them all out.
They may have done all that, yeah. So there's a lot of things. But again, the real crux of what we're saying is don't look at the depth of the market. It's not going to help you in buying and selling.
All right, well, if my plea actually worked. Daniel, thank you so much for calling into the show. You saved me. You saved my bacon. So, Daniel, thank you. Where are you calling from, please? And what's your stock?
I'm calling from Cronulla, and I was looking to see if you guys could have a look at Domino's Pizza, DMP.
Excellent. I was hoping somebody would call in about that one. Thank you so much. And why do you want to know about Domino's? Do you eat the pizza?
I love the pizza. I'm pretty sure I'm the reason all the profits rose over the last year. But look, I was looking to get into, I've been looking at it. If I were to buy in, I just wanted to see what you guys thought on its support level currently, and it would be more of like a medium to long term, I think.
And have you been trading long, Daniel? You sound young. Hello, are you there, Daniel?
Yes, sorry.
Have you been trading long?
No, I don't take too many trades, but I've been watching the market for quite a while. I think my confidence would need to be built.
Okay, fantastic. Good on you, Daniel. All right, we'll have a look at Domino's for you, and it's helping Domino's if you keep eating their pizza, isn't it? I don't know about the waistline.
They don't make money out of me. I don't buy pizzas.
All right. All right, we're looking at this chart. Now, what I actually really like about this chart is the orderly way in which it's actually fallen relative to the rise. So you can see the angle of this rise up and the angle of the rise down.
It's fairly symmetrical.
That is really nice, isn't it? Now, we're seeing a bit of consolidation, so I'd have to say that he's picked a good level. $100 is, when the stock's rising, could be a psychological resistance level to the rise, and when a stock's falling, that could actually be a support level. So, I think he could be onto something there, but it could be a short-term entry. We'd have to see some momentum on the upside, a strong rise, before we know whether it's actually going to take off. I think that would be the first important thing. And then you need some really good rules and a trigger to determine, well, what are you actually going to use to get in?
Trend lines.
The next thing. Your book will tell them all that.
Trend line.
And then it's about setting the stop loss and just checking to see what makes sense in terms of setting a stop loss. So be really mindful of making sure that at the time that you go to buy, you make sure that you set that stop loss then. So that's probably all I can really add. Did you want to say something there, Dale?
No, just a bit earlier. I just think I agree with you on the stock. It does look good at the moment, but it's still too early to tell. It hasn't proven it stopped falling yet. It has fallen quite heavily up to this stage. So, but yeah, just sit back, mate, and just wait. Don't jump early. It's better to jump later than early. Too many times on this show we see people from emails and callers who just jumped too early into stock thinking it was cheap or it stopped falling. So it's always better to err on the caution side and jump a little bit later and maybe not capture 5 or 10% of the rise, but knowing it's rising, which is a hell of a lot safer. So that's all I would say.
Yep,
What do you
and
think?
when you start learning how to use rules, then you'll understand how to determine which rules are more likely to be the better rules on a stock at a particular time. So look forward to all of that. You're only young and you've got, so many years ahead of him.
Well, you don't know. He didn't tell you how old he was.
Well, I was just going to guess.
He
but
just thought you were prying.
I wasn't prying.
Well, you don't know.
I thought it was exciting.
Oh, it was exciting. Okay.
Yeah.
You
All
just
right.
assumed he was young.
Yes. Our next email is from George. Hi, Dale and Janine. As always, the legendary team, thank you. Would you please look over PRU as gold is creeping and trading higher of late? And what are your thoughts on gold stocks being an inflation insulator for more defensive or conservative portion of a portfolio? For the medium to long term, great shows already this year. Keep up the great work. Thanks, George.
Thank you,
Right.
George.
Awesome question. Interesting stock. What do you think?
Look, I like it. I think it looks good, actually. I think it looks very, very nice. And it is volatile, as you would normally say for this type of stock. So, but I think it looks really, really good.
So pick gold stocks as a defence against inflationary pressures?
It's one of those things I'm not saying it's an old wives' tale, go defensive in gold, because that's what people used to do. So it's different, a little bit different now. But I don't have a problem with people buying into gold stocks as a hedge against inflation. But is it as effective as it used to be? That's my question. And I haven't done the research unless you have.
Okay, let's just have a look at some charts then, okay? So
Okay,
I've
let's
got
look at some charts.
something that I've just hidden in here behind this chart. So Perseus Mining is the stock that he wanted us to talk about.
Yep.
Which, by the way, I think it looks really nice. It's sitting there consolidating. It may get to about 220.
Yes.
Somewhere between that 180 and 220 is an important level for it. Looking at the gold price, we can see this line chart over the stock. And remember, I've said to you on previous shows, always, not you, I'm talking the viewers, you know this
Okay.
already, to always look at the gold price or the underlying whatever it is, to have a look and see how it's tracking relative to it. And it's reasonable
It's
in terms of,
reasonable, that stock.
it's not exact. Like some stocks you see, they pretty much track it perfectly. But
So inflation, can you overlay inflation, or have you already
no, I
done
haven't
that?
got that on there.
Okay, because that's the question, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, does it actually allow... I would say that if you look at gold, it's been rising.
Yeah, it has.
So, I mean, what does that tell you in itself? Unless gold stops, so I've actually got a gold chart somewhere here as
Looking
well.
at the last couple of years, inflation's been rising, but gold hasn't been.
Right. Gold is rising. So, I mean, it has been... Look, if you're looking at the last few years, it has been going up, so it appreciates. Our gold expert that we talked to on Talking Wealth
Joshua.
interviews, Joshua Rothbart. If you've looked at our Talking Wealth podcasts and watched us on flicks.net with the Talking Wealth recordings that we do with some of the different experts in different areas, he was talking about it making a good return every year over the long term, but obviously some years it could be sideways. This is gold, per se.
Yeah, I think it averages, 10, 11%?
Yeah,
per
something
annum.
like that.
So
And
it's pretty
so,
good.
but of course, everything depends on when you buy.
Correct.
However, we're seeing a nice uptick in the gold price at the moment, with the potential to go up another 17, maybe 20% if it gets through this high here. So I'm just looking at the high of in June 2021. So that could actually be really good for your little stock PRU, which is also consolidating sideways. But I'll just go to the weekly chart and coming back to this stock again. If it actually takes off on the downside below that low, then I'd just walk
out of
away
Yep.
from it. Don't be attached to it, and just if it continues to move up, great.
All right, so let's get into another email for tonight. The next question we have is from Ryan, who says, "Hello, Janine and Dale. Thanks for all the effort and the great show. Now, Paladin brought my attention as the stock went back to its support at the range of 70-cent range. The stock is in a downtrend since its peak at $1.12 with no uptrend confirmation, but a very similar pattern occurred between June to September before it jumped to the highest peak in mid of September. I'd like to know whether the trend line can be applied for this type of volatile stock. Thanks again, Ryan." Well done, Ryan. That was a great email and well detailed. I like that.
Well thought through.
Well thought through. I think
look-
you'd give him a gold star.
I don't think he needs a gold star. He's got the uranium star.
Oh, well then
Paladin,
give him
uranium,
give
isn't
him.
it? All right, so looking at Paladin, it is a smaller stock. We don't look at these shares. I mean, it's been trading under $1. So that tells you something. In the industry, generally, there's not a huge focus on stocks under $1, but the game can change once a stock consistently breaks that level. Looking at it now, though, he's right. There is a decline on the share price. Looking at the weekly chart there, we can see that sort of sideways consolidation that happened there.
50, 55.
Oh, you think it's coming back further? Yeah, okay. So we could see it fall away further. So right now that I wouldn't be looking to buy a stock like this, and you'd want to know that it's actually going up and trending nicely before you actually consider getting in, because it is high risk.
Oh, it is high risk, but his question was, would you use trend lines on this stock? And I would probably use different rules on this stock, mate.
Because of the volatility.
Because of the volatility. And the reason why I say that is trend lines work brilliantly on trending stocks. Now, what is a trend? That's a big question. And I can give you a high level answer, but what you want with trend lines is stocks that are highly liquid too. The less liquidity, the less the trend lines will work well on it. That's why we teach them on the biggest stocks. So right now I'd be using other rules to trade this other than trend lines, I think. Is that nice?
Yeah,
to see for
potentially.
you?
I think
Not
you
too
are
much waffle
spot on
for
there.
you?
No, but he was talking about trends.
Yes.
So I thought it was really good that he picked up on the
I do.
trend and
I
looking
think-
for the trend change and said it was not going up yet. So maybe he's waiting to confirm an uptrend.
Well, hopefully he is, and that's what we're teaching people, to make sure they wait for the down move to finish and then getting up. So well done, Ryan. So thank you for your question. But that's our thoughts on Paladin for the night. Now, if you did call into the show and you missed out on us answering your question, then watch our show next Tuesday between 7 and 8 p.m, as we really would love to chat with you. Now, if you are not able to watch live, you can also email your question ahead of the show. You can do this by sending your email to info@wealthwithin.com.au. And remember, you need to include Wealth Within Live in the subject line.
Also, we would really appreciate your support for what we share each week. You can do this simply by subscribing to our channel. So if you have not done so yet, please hit that subscribe button now. And also give the show a big thumbs up. Well, that is it for tonight's show, and we do hope you enjoyed what we presented tonight. We've so enjoyed receiving all your emails and calls, and thank you those who actually made the effort and picked up the phone and called us. We want to hear from more of you in future. We love the opportunity to chat with you personally.
Yeah, too right. Now, as always, thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a great week. For now, goodbye, good luck, and good trading.
Bye for now.